Alright, what's going on, guys? And welcome to a video that's been an unbelievable amount of time in the making. This is the entire PUBG Iceberg explained. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Iceberg format and you know how these videos work, but just in case you're not and you're not up to speed, an Iceberg essentially is a list of like random, facts that can be ranged from very surface level to extremely obscure and sometimes even downright disturbing. And it's kind of strange because literally every topic under God's green earth has had an Iceberg video made about it, except PUBG. I couldn't find any Iceberg videos, nor could I even find just an Iceberg image in general to go off of. So with the help of a lot of you guys in my community, a little bit from myself and just other sources, we actually put together a full PUBG Iceberg, and we're going to be exploring that today. Now let me just say, we were able to put together a pretty damn hefty iceberg, but there's still so much that we could include. Like, we can make an entire separate iceberg video if you guys really want to see it enough. So after this one, if you guys enjoyed this enough, show me if you want another one by dropping a thumbs up on the video. That would be very much appreciated, and definitely subscribe if you are brand new to the channel. And in case you guys play PUBG, I also have a creator code that you can use to help support this kind of content. You can add it to your account, links in the description below, and please let me know in the comments if you do use my code so that I can thank you personally. But let's not waste any more time and let's get into it. So starting at the very tip of the iceberg itself, let's start off with the Eeringel name. So obviously this is the most iconic map in PUBG. This is the one that when you think of the game, you're most likely picturing this map in your mind. The map's name itself came from the fact that Brendan Green, the main developer and brains behind PUBG, he has a daughter named Erin, and he literally just went and used her name to build it into the main map of PUBG, and it's been Eeringel ever since and probably always will be. 8x ARs. This refers to the time in really early release days of PUBG and even early development where you could essentially apply any attachment you want on basically any gun, and for a lot of reasons this meant putting the 8x scope on assault rifles, which proved to be absolutely broken, and they were able to patch this a little bit later on. They made some balance changes where the most powerful scope you could put on an AR was a 6x, but the 8x scopes will always be iconic in PUBG for a lot of reasons, and you could put them on guns that were extremely goofy. DayZ mod. This is also very much confused with the Arma 3 mod, which is really the original inspiration for where PUBG came from. Brendan Green obviously was heavily inspired by Arma, which is a milsim game, and he essentially developed a mod that behaved like Battle Royale for that mode. And after having a decent amount of success with that mod, he went on to make a fully fledged project in the style of Battle Royale, which had really never been done to that scale, and that's what we know now as PUBG today. Tommy gun airdrop. Very similar to the 8x ARs, this refers to a time in the game in which, yes, if you can believe it, for those of you who maybe are new players, the Tommy gun was an airdrop only weapon at one point. Now, it used to be like significantly better when it was the Tommy gun version in the airdrops as compared to the ground loot we have now. It was a much better gun, but even so, it's just kind of weird to think about how this somewhat looked down upon gun now, or very middle of the road, was revered as one of the best in early PUBG. The pan glitch. Now, a lot of you may know where I'm going with this, but the pan originally wasn't supposed to block bullets. Obviously now, if you put it on your back or even hold it in your hand in front of your face, it can block incoming bullets if it, hits the actual model of it. But originally, the pan wasn't supposed to block bullets. This was an unintended glitch and a feature they just left in the game. To me, the pan has become so iconic in PUBG, not just because of that fact, but it wouldn't have become as revered, I don't think, if they had just, with an early game patched out the glitch and made the pan essentially useless, because that's what it would have been. But now it's become an icon of the game, and it was just basically from an unintended bug that existed in early development. Next is the Ballistic Mask, and this is honestly kind of an obscure one to have this high on the iceberg, but this is just in reference to the Ballistic Mask cosmetic that currently exists in game. It doesn't actually do anything. You can just wear it on your face, but in early PUBG, this Ballistic Mask was actually supposed to protect your face from bullet damage. Now, the only helmet in the game that actually protects your face is, of course, the level 3 helmet, but you could basically combine a level 2 helmet with a Ballistic Mask and have essentially the coverage of a level 3 helmet. They didn't end up going through with this, and the Ballistic Mask is obviously totally cosmetic now, but it wasn't always supposed to be that way. Fortnite copied PUBG. Now, while this one's kind of a joke, it's also a little bit not, because when, Fortnite first released, it's pretty obvious to tell the heavy inspiration or nearly copying of at least the sandbox of PUBG, and to a point where they had a very similar weapon selection even. Obviously, Fortnite is entirely its own game mode now, and it's like completely different identity to PUBG, but when it first released, there were some very close similarities to the game. Now, we're moving down a level to the main body of the iceberg, but still above the surface, so we have Wado Heck. So this is is basically a stream sniper that would always follow around Shroud back in the day, and he would just literally say Wado Heck. That's the only thing you would ever hear come out of his mouth. And interestingly, he disappeared for a while, but Wado Heck still streams on Twitch, but he dropped the whole Wado thing and literally just speaks regularly now, so that's interesting. Next is PewDiePie Bridge. I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain this one, but a lot of you guys will just be able to hear this image alone. And if you've seen this picture, let's just say some choice words were said on this bridge while PewDiePie was streaming, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. Brendan Green leaves PUBG. So this is just talking about how Brendan, obviously the creator of PUBG, this was a few years ago, but he left he just left the company in general. He left making the game probably shortly after Miramar came out, I think, and so everything after the release of Miramar was not Brendan Green's doing, or not necessarily his direct creative control. Next is New State. This is a mobile-only game that is set in PUBG, but as a futuristic setting for it, and there's a lot of, like, you know, new tech, that kind of thing, and we thought for a long time that New State was going to be PUBG 2. It was going to be on PC, console, and it was going to be the second iteration of the game, but it really isn't, and in fact, it's very strange because New State is trying to separate itself from the brand of PUBG. They completely dropped the PUBG logo, and it's just called New State now. Level 4 armor. Yeah, this is something I couldn't find a ton of hard evidence on, but I do recall at one point I heard through the grapevine that at least really early on in PUBG, like I'm talking a couple years ago, there was at least talks of making level 4 armor like very exclusive and trying to get it to balance within the game, but I don't think it would have worked well with the delicate balance with like health and armor the way that it's currently implemented in PUBG, so I just don't think it would have been a good fit. Crossbow grip. Yes, at one point in PUBG's development, the crossbow did have a grip attachment. Now, it was cut so early on that there's hardly any evidence left that this attachment ever existed, but it did at one point. This was ultimately cut from the game because it was just virtually unnecessary. It didn't need to be there and didn't really have much of a function, so I'm glad they got rid of it. That stuff was just the very tip of the iceberg. Now we drop just below the surface, and the first thing I think we should talk about is the Riot Shield. For those of you unfamiliar, the Riot Shield is an unreleased weapon that was shown off years ago in a trailer for a PUBG update, and this apparently was supposed to be able to block bullets, very similar to the pan, and this item literally never got released. Now, a lot of you guys know that, but I have an interesting story about this. I was able to talk to PUBG developers themselves directly about what happened to the Riot Shield, and apparently this was a result of miscommunication from people at the weapons team who thought that they were going to be able to get this thing sorted and balanced and finished, and the team that was responsible for marketing included this footage not knowing that they shouldn't yet. It's a bit of a shame. I don't think we're ever going to see the Riot Shield, although it's like kind of wild they showed off in a trailer and just like, yeah, I mean, honestly, lads, it's never coming out. Next is ZIL313. This is in reference to a truck that was first shown off during a vehicle devlog all the way back in 2016, if you can believe that. Now, the model of this truck can still be found in-game. However, originally, this was intended to be used as a drivable vehicle, but it never came to fruition in that sense. There was also 3 variants of it, a closed-top version, open-top, and an armored version as well. Vikendi Cave Removal. This is talking about how originally Vikendi had the secret cave that could only be accessed by hitting this certain spot in a mountain with a vehicle to open up a secret passage, and inside this cave, there were tons of airdrops and just weapons and armor that you could stack up on, and when they remastered Vikendi, they completely removed this loot cave. Sniper Magazine Removal. This one is kind of strange. I remember, I think it was around maybe 2 years ago at this point, they removed specifically the extended quick draw mag for sniper rifles. They didn't remove the regular quick draw and they didn't remove the extended, but the extended quick draw was nowhere to be found in game, and this was the case for like 6 months, I think, before they just quietly decided to add it back in. I have no idea why they took it out. I don't know if it broke something in the game, but it was gone. Square Zone. This one's a pretty cool one. I remember talking about this a few years ago as well. Now, this was just in reference to the fact that PUBG obviously has a circle and the ring that brings players together. This has pretty much been the formula, the precedent set for every Battle Royale game that has come out, but originally, PUBG was supposed to have a square zone, but it was apparently unbelievably difficult to develop that. They ultimately went with a circle zone just because it made the technical aspect of it a lot easier, but it would have been so weird to see if PUBG launched with a square zone. Would that affect battle royales for years to come? Like, would Fortnite have a square zone, Apex, every other BR? Would that be the precedent? It's interesting to think about. Next is the infamous moon map, and yes, I'm not kidding. Well, at least to the extent that PUBG on April Fool's a couple years ago released full-on patch notes that detailed a moon map that they would be working on and releasing in the game. Now, obviously, this is an April Fool's joke, although I do wonder to what extent maybe they toyed around with this just as a fun idea, and maybe they would have just like released it in PUBG Labs as an experimental mode or something. I don't know, but a lot of people legitimately believe we were getting a moon map, which was really funny. Super energy drink. This is one of my favorites. This was a better version of the regular energy drink that boosts not only your like stamina bar, but also obviously recovers HP. This was never released in the traditional mode. However, they released it as the mega energy drink inside of a PUBG Labs mode that was a sort of fantasy wizard kind of situation. It was really weird, and I honestly thought they were going to add it to standard BR. They never did, although I thought it would have been a great addition. It pretty much just functioned like the regular energy drink, but all of the stats were literally on crack. You'd recover health unbelievably fast, and then I'm pretty sure it would also last for a little bit longer too. Eeringel record players. So this is sort of strange, and it's kind of obscure to be this at this position on the iceberg, but honestly, the Eeringel record players, I'm not even still sure are in game, but I remember what they were. They're just record players you could find in random spots all over the map in houses and stuff, and they would play different kinds of music. This could be heard by other players and maybe potentially troll them or alert them to your location or whatever. Now, a lot of people thought, including myself, that there was something much more to these, like maybe some kind of Easter egg associated with them, but nothing was ever really discovered, and as far as I'm aware, they were literally just music players. Now, we come to the chunk that's just below the surface of the iceberg, but still kind of in the middle. So let's start with the pachinky secret room. This is just talking about how in the new Eeringel Remastered, specifically in the new version of the church, there's a door in which you can go down to the basement that also has like a library down there, but on one of these secret bookcases, you can interact with it to reveal another secret room behind it. Now, there's nothing too crazy you can do in these rooms or anything. It's just, you know, some extra loot, but it is cool that this space exists, and I actually don't think players are even aware of the secret room itself. PUBG pays cheaters. Now, this one is just kind of straight up stupid. This is just a conspiracy that many people have had, that PUBG basically pays cheat makers to make cheats so that people will buy the cheats to use in game, and that PUBG gets some kind of like, you know, kickback from those purchases. Completely untrue, and in fact, the most recent evidence would suggest the exact opposite, where they're actually, cheat makers are forced to pay PUBG and Krafton supposedly over $10 million in damages. I should specify this is PUBG Mobile in this particular legal issue, but I would imagine the same would still stretch for PUBG PC and just like the main game generally if they really wanted to. Red Bull lawsuit. This is talking about the fact that PUBG eventually got into some legal trouble with Red Bull by using the likeness of the energy drink in game. The original energy drink, obviously just by looking at it, is literally called Hot Bull, and even the, you know, build of it is like the skinnier Red Bull can build, and they changed this. Now the energy drink is a little bit bulkier. It looks more like a soda or like a beer can than anything, and they changed the logo on the front of it as well. But apparently, yeah, they got into some hot trouble with the Red Bull company and ended up having to change the logo very quietly in a patch in like 2018. TT1. Now, if you know what this is just from these three letters, I'm honestly really impressed, but this is in reference to a game that we knew was being developed by PUBG devs. This is all we knew at the time. The news was, hey, the PUBG developers are working on a brand new game, and there's like a little bit of info about it, but it ended up being a game called Thunder Tier 1, which is kind of like a third-person, almost like an RTS game. I've played it, not really my thing. I don't know if it did extremely well or anything. Wasn't really my game, but it ended up being a little bit of a disappointment because we all thought it was going to be PUBG too. Next is melee takedowns. This one's kind of weird. I'm actually going to throw a bonus one on top of this. So apparently there were a lot of animations being worked on for melee takedowns potentially in PUBG if you like snuck up on somebody. Think of like how Warzone does it if you know, assassinate somebody from the back. And additionally to that, originally there was a different animation and a full-on movement mechanic where if you were laying prone and you used like your Q and E keys or whatever you have to lean, it would do this sort of like army combat roll that you could like roll around in the grass with. It was really strange and it looks goofy, but I don't think it would have worked well in PUBG, and they ended up cutting it from the game pretty early on. Miramar aliens. This is a pretty weird one, so buckle in. Now, this was at a point in the game when PUBG only had Eeringel and Miramar to be offered, and there's a section in the map that's in a very obscure location that realistically you're never going to play in Miramar. and I guess especially the original, but there's this patch of rocks where they appear to have like these strange alien markings on them, and even surrounding them and a couple of other spots, there's like those sort of UFO like crop rings that you see in like movies all the time. It's some really strange stuff, and there's some other weird references to potentially aliens all over original Miramar. A lot of that stuff is gone in new Miramar now, so you know, much of this we don't really have access to anymore. But I remember at the time this being incredibly strange. PUBG's story mode, this one's strange, so stick with me. This is not talking about the new game that Striking Distance Studios is developing that's called the Callisto Protocol. This is really weird because it's kind of like a spiritual successor to Dead Space. It's also being developed by Glenn Schofield, and this is technically speaking in the PUBG universe. Now, why or how, I have literally no idea. It's like far in the future, it's got aliens and stuff. Very strange stuff. You wouldn't even remotely think of PUBG when looking at this game, but this is not what this is in reference to. This is talking about, I don't know if it was ever more than an idea or parts of this are developed somewhere, but I guess for the main game of PUBG, there was supposed to be a team that was developing like small, short, like story campaigns for the modes, and maybe there were going to be like one campaign per map or something. Something similar you could compare it to maybe the like kind of PvE mode that Apex Legends had, and I would assume it was somewhere along the lines of that. It's a shame it never got released, and I don't know if they're even still being worked on at this point. I highly doubt it, honestly. Having a short little playable PUBG campaign could honestly be a really cool idea, and maybe they'll go forward with something like that in the future. Now we start to enter the deep part of the iceberg, and I think for this one we should start with PUBG. So this is, I had to do a little bit of research on this one because I remember hearing about it, but I literally thought it was a joke, and it was for a while. This was an April Fool's joke of like a 2D arcade style shooter that where you just fight chickens. It's the same, I guess, look of PUBG in terms of like the characters that it uses, but you literally just fight chickens in an arcade style shooter. They put this in the Steam version of the game for a while, despite everybody thinking this was fake. Cheating streamers. Now this one, I want to be really careful about how I approach this because there's a lot of pro players and also just like prominent streamers that have been undeniably caught cheating in this game, but there's also a lot of cases in which it's like kind of a gray area, nobody really knows, and some, you know, false accusations have been thrown out. Now that's not to say that there hasn't been any instances of big prominent players cheating in the game, but a lot of them are, I think, kind of baseless as well. And in doing my research for seeing like sort of who was cheating and how it was proven, I ended up watching some videos that were kind of like evidence against certain popular PUBG streamers and, you know, showing clips to incriminate them. And I was doing my research and I was like, okay, this is fairly interesting. But then I realized the same guy actually made a video about me too. I had no idea. And at this point, I just can't really take that very seriously. So suffice to say, a lot of big streamers, not a ton of them, but some have been undeniably caught cheating. Some have been literally kicked from pro leagues for cheating as well. It's a very case-by-case basis, and you have to do individual analysis when making, you know, blanket statements about that kind of stuff. But yeah, cheating streamers, there's been a couple that have been undeniably caught. Fortnite lawsuit. Now, this is tangentially related to when we were talking about earlier how early Fortnite was, in a way, a copy-paste of PUBG, at least at the time when it came out. And there was a full-on lawsuit that PUBG was going to be taking Fortnite, essentially, to court over this. And at one point, the lawsuit just straight up dropped. I don't know what happened to it, but I guess they kind of realized that they wouldn't really have a case to make against it. It would have been a little bit silly of them to try that. Movement system overhaul. This one was kind of a hot-button issue for a while, and in some sense still is, but this is talking about how PUBG, at some point we knew that they were working on, or still are, a very overhauled advanced version of the current PUBG movement system, or more or less just a polishing of it, because I think a lot of what makes PUBG PUBG and its identity is its movement, but I do think it has a little bit of room for just like polish on a technical standpoint of it. And I even talked to PUBG developers about this one too. I know they hired guys from like that previously worked on Warzone and everything to make and help this movement system, but I haven't heard anything about it in a long time, and I don't know what the current status of this is. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to see a completely foreign version of PUBG's movement to where it doesn't even feel like the game anymore, so I'm not sure what their plans are. I know they're adding animations slowly but surely, but I don't know how much of an overhaul it's really going to be. Next is the rebrand of PUBG. This is just a minor thing they've done to their branding recently where they've kind of tried to drop the PlayerUnknowns part out of the name. Now, PUBG is what it is, so they can't really remove that part of it, but they've tried to remove the PlayerUnknown part, especially like on Twitch. That is no longer what the category is called. It's called PUBG Battlegrounds now, so they've kind of tried to drop the whole PlayerUnknown thing for some reason. PUBG Bitcoin mining. Now, this one was quite the interesting read. I had to do a lot of research on this, and basically what I came up with was pretty insane. The theory goes that one of the reasons PUBG runs so poorly, even on high-end PCs, is because it's at the same time mining Bitcoin in the background, and that's obviously going to take a lot of your GPU, and so that could be one of the reasons why the game, in theory, shouldn't have that bad performance, but it does for a lot of people. Now, there's also some minorly compelling evidence when you look at PUBG Peak's player counts and how much Bitcoin is actually being mined at the time, and the trends are pretty close, and when you put them side by side, it's like, okay, this looks a little bit incriminating, but I'm not entirely convinced yet. I'm not 100% sure, but it's something interesting to think about. Upgraded Ghillie suit. I actually remember this one happening. This was directly after Eeringel got remastered and they put it on the test servers, and obviously they were going to test it and rework a few things before officially releasing it, but on accident, somehow the upgraded version or the remastered version of the Ghillie suit ended up sneaking its way back into old Eeringel in care packages, and because of that combination, the remastered textures up against the old ones, it was absolutely broken. You literally couldn't see somebody in a Ghillie suit if they were in grass. I think they ended up fixing it in like 2 or 3 days, so this wasn't around for very long, but it was really funny when it was. Now we enter the very bottom, the depths of the iceberg, and this for this particular iceberg video, let's start with the Miramar Ciphers. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with these ones at the bottom of the iceberg, and the Miramar Ciphers are actually one of my favorite to talk about. So this, unfortunately, might be an Easter egg or a secret in the game that has been lost to time, because I don't believe they appear in the current version of Miramar. But back when original Miramar was around, there's a ton, like maybe 40 or 50 of these small one-room shacks that you guys, I'm sure, have seen countless times around the maps, and not all of them, but a few of them would have numbers inside of the actual shack itself near the top of the door, and the numbers, when translated into a just basic number to letter cipher, this is as far as I got. It spelled out a secret, and unfortunately I wasn't able to explore anymore. I couldn't find any more numbers at that point to finish the rest of the cipher, and like I said, I don't think they appear in current Miramar, so I think whatever this cipher was supposed to say has been completely lost to time. Either way though, this was the first real Easter egg I stumbled across in PUBG that got me really excited to look for more, and you know, this ended up being a little bit of a big deal for a while, but I don't think this one's ever going to get solved at this point because old Miramar is obviously inaccessible. Project Titan. This one is hopefully what we're all expecting it to be, or a lot of the leaks have been suggesting that PUBG is announcing some kind of big project game at the end of 2022. And I know this is like a boy who cried wolf situation a lot, where it could just end up being like kind of like a new state situation, but from what we know, this is a big battle royale project that PUBG's been working on for a while. I don't know what it's going to be exactly, but they're supposed to unveil on something at the end of the year, and it sounds really exciting. As far as like big projects, this is the one to keep your eye out for. At the moment, we don't know a ton about it, but I'm sure that will be made clear as time goes on. PUBG Exosuits, another sort of strange one and super obscure. So I think, if I recall correctly, this is in reference to a developer that didn't work on PUBG for too long, but it was somewhere back in like 2016 or 2017, suggested the idea of an exosuit, like attachable piece of gear, and the community shredded him for it, and this was removed like almost immediately. But we don't know what this exosuit was supposed to cover. Like, was this going to boost movement mechanics? Like, was this just going to be something minor, like extra armor or whatever? We don't really know much about. Maybe it could have been just entirely cosmetic. We're not sure, but this got so much backlash immediately that they essentially erased all trace of them ever announcing something like this. Next is the Pillar site and the Tythonic Industries website. So basically, there are two factions in the PUBG PUBG lore, Pillar Industries, which is a private military company, and then Tithonic Industries. And if you want to know more about these specifically, I made a full PUBG storyline explain video you guys can watch that goes into great detail about what these are, but they have their own full-blown real websites that you can literally go and visit for yourself. And behind the Pillar Industries one, if you switch it to dark mode, there's a secret passcode that you need to access this part of the site, and I assume the code is to be found somewhere on Haven, most likely, but I don't know how to get into this site. I genuinely don't know if anybody has done it before, but if you guys know the code, how to get into this Pillar site and what's behind it, definitely enlighten me in the comments below and let us know. Got a real kind of creepy vibe to it, and the Tithonic Industries website as well has like emails that you can literally message as well. Crazy stuff. So I recommend, if you guys really want to kind of go down the rabbit hole, go visit these websites and see what you can find. But yeah, PUBG death incidents. This is just referring to the fact that there's been some legitimately unfortunate accidents in relation to literal violence being had over PUBG games, whether it's like accidental or intentional. There's been a lot of news and cases over the years that have displayed these. Like, it's unbelievably unfortunate. I want to go into detail on these too much, but I feel like there's at least one major like event a year of this or accident that happens with PUBG. Now, this isn't just a PUBG thing. Like, this happens with Call of Duty wagers too. There's a lot of stories about just literally every game having this being the catalyst for some unfortunate event like that. And finally, to end off on a little bit more of a lighter note here, I want to talk about the thermal scope mode that seemingly nobody remembers added to PUBG PC. Now, the thermal scope is something I remember like suggesting. A lot of you guys suggested this too, that potentially could be a really cool optic attachment, and they made a whole mode about this at some point, but I found some footage of it, but I asked people if they remember playing this or even knowing it existed, and like 95% of PC players or console players don't even recall this taking place. It's like this weird Mandela effect thing that I for some reason a lot of PUBG players aren't even aware of. But yeah, thermal scopes and night mode for other maps were a thing at one point, and hopefully they'll bring some of these ideas back in the future, because I really think a lot of this could be kind of cool. But yeah, thermal mode was only around for a very short period of time, and for some reason everyone forgets about it. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to be the entire PUBG Iceberg. But here's the thing, I have so much material to go over that we can make an entire new video of this. I could make a second Iceberg on this game if you guys really want me to. So if you do, make sure to drop a like on the video. And I also have a Discord that you guys can join that you can specifically use for more information on a PUBG Iceberg if I make a follow-up video. So I encourage you guys to join that if you want to be part of the next one. But yeah, link to that's going to be in the description. But otherwise, drop a like if you guys enjoyed, and subscribe if you're brand new. And don't forget to use my creator code if you guys would like to. That'd be very much appreciated. Once again, all that stuff is found down below. But have a great rest of your day, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.